IVM.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Getting Meta. We are in the Ask Meta part of this show, the post-interview section where I try to answer your questions with my experience, the collected knowledge gleaned through all these interviews that I've done, and hopefully a little bit of gut as well. Thank you for sending in your questions. I've actually got quite a few, so maybe we'll do a couple more of these. But I have a few questions lined up for today, so let's get right to them. The first question comes from Aishwarya.
Hi, Chuck. My question was, how do you get another project or another client when you know the project is about to wrap up? How do you plan the timing? I'm currently working full time, plus I'm doing freelance. So I don't really have the energy to start approaching clients. And another side note, I also got this current gig that I have with someone's help. So I don't exactly know how to approach clients myself. I have potential projects, but I don't know how to make them into actual projects that I will, approach or I will start once this current gig is over. So this is something that makes me really anxious. Let me know what you think. And once again, thank you so much for answering my questions. Also, side note, love your podcast. It's amazing. Thank you.
Hey Aishwarya, thanks for the question and for the kind words. Okay, this seems like a simple matter of planning, although I know that seems like a bit of a vague and cop out answer. I think as you do more and more freelance, this will come more naturally to you. You'll have a good sense of when a project is ending, and then you can start looking for work accordingly beforehand. And also, the more you do this, the more comfortable you will feel approaching clients as well. And also keep in mind, each project makes life easier for you because you have one additional credential to show. For example, if you are working on, say, a website project right now, you haven't mentioned which field you're freelancing in, but let's assume that it's, say, something like graphic design or something. So if you do one website, that makes it easier for you to approach another client for website design. So you basically just have made your own job easier, right? Your first couple of jobs are always going to be tough, and you will have to get them through friends or whatever the case may be. But the more you do, the easier it becomes for you. So just keep that bit of confidence in mind. Constantly build a portfolio. Again, just make your own life easier by building a portfolio. You don't need a website per se, although it helps. You can just be a very standard mail saying that, hey, this is the things that I worked on. Or even if you're cold mailing people on LinkedIn or something, you can specify. And my advice would always be, try to be as specific as possible. Like, again, if you're a designer, for instance, don't just say, hey, I'm a designer. Say very specifically what it is that you've worked on and why it is that you have approached a particular person. Is it because you like the company, the category, you have done work in that category or that space before? So that level of specificity whenever you're outreaching always helps, in my opinion, because those guys might not have work for you immediately, but they'll remember you as somebody who is keen to work in that category or has experience in that category before, right? So like I said, as you freelance more, you'll have a better sense of when a project is going to wrap up and when you can go about seeking clients, or you will be more confident of getting more work from an existing client. This is something that you should work towards, unless you are more keen on having short-term projects with different types of clients. Also not a bad approach, but many times clients will have recurring requests over a period of time. In your case, though, since you have a full-time job, the pressure, I'm guessing, is a little less. So you can even think about taking a bit of a break if you want. So you can finish this project and then use that interim period to search for more work. So don't let it, give you anxiety as such, because there's no pressure as such because you have a full-time job. At least that's my assumption. And remember, when you are looking to search for work, social is a great place to go to. Just put the word out there, ask a few friends to retweet, etc. And chances are, in this environment, you will get some amount of work, because I have actually seen so much demand for quality people, or just search on your own. If you don't want to put it out, just search on your own, looking for freelancers or looking for help in this space, etc., etc. Chances are you will find something, either on Twitter or LinkedIn. I have just seen so many posts over the last year or so. So it's a great time to be a freelancer, like I'm always saying. And it's also okay to start doing the so-called client outreach, say a month or 2 weeks before your project is getting over, and say that you will have bandwidth, say 2 weeks or 1 month down the line. It's completely okay to do that. It's very rare that you're going to reach out to a client and they have work for you immediately. So I actually say, if you are outreaching, it's something that you should constantly do, or do at least so that you're assured that some work will keep happening. And if there is inbound requests, which will happen if you keep doing quality work, don't be afraid of telling them that you'll be able to take this on only 2 weeks or a month down the line. When I started off freelancing about 2 years ago, I was pretty much in the same boat as you, in the sense that I had anxiety in terms of, and I shouldn't use the word anxiety actually, because it wasn't really anxiety, but I was worried about, okay, this project's about to end, is something else going to come soon? But I was soon surprised by how easy it was to kind of fill that void. Something or the other keeps coming up, and I also got more comfortable telling clients that, hey, I won't be able to take this up right now, I can do this in 2 weeks or so. And right now, luckily, I'm in a place where I don't need to do that business development as such, and I just thankfully have a steady stream of inbounds. So yeah, eventually the steady stream will happen, and you will have a bank of people to go back to. So that's my short-ish answer on how to think about this whole space. Eventually, of course, you will want to think about going freelance full time. At least that's what my assumption might be. So use all this as a experiment learning period. See what works for you, what space you like freelancing, and what are the good things about what are the things about freelancing that you like and don't like, and just plan from there accordingly. I think everyone's recipe is different. Everybody will have a different way of approaching this. So I think it's just a matter of doing as much as you can, making as many mistakes as you can early in your freelance career, and then figuring out a way that works well. I know some people, for example, who do a project, dedicate everything into that project, and then take a break for a bit and then start all over again. So if that's something that works for you, then great. Otherwise, you can have a steady stream. You can have a list of people who you need to contact on a regular basis, so on and so forth. So don't worry about it. These are things that will sort themselves out over a period of time. It's just a matter of constantly being at it. I hope this helps, Aishwarya. Thanks once again for the question and the kind words. On to the next question. This comes from Shehzad.
Hi, Chuck. Here are two questions I would really like your help with. The first one is the value of an MBA program, especially given the state of the world we live in as of today. The second one is, how do you think a person could build a career in the creative industry?
Hey, Shehzad, thanks for the question. Two very thoughtful questions there. Let me try to give you my perspective on both of them. The first one, you asked about the value of an MBA in this day and age. I think an MBA you have to look at in three aspects, right? What does an MBA give you? To me, there are three parts, right? One is education, second is the network, and third is certification and branding that you get as a result of the MBA and the college that you go to. Right now, let's look at each of these. The education part, to my mind, is actually the least important of the three. I know that's a little controversial to say, but to me, a lot of the things that an MBA teaches you, you can actually learn on the job yourself. Of course, it'll take a longer time to do that, or you can fill in these gaps from various online courses, etc., while you're studying. So in that sense, it might seem a little ludicrous to spend 2 years of your life, not earn money. In fact, you're spending a fair bit of money in order to learn all this. I'm not discounting the quality of an MBA education at all. It's just that a lot of those things, I feel, can actually be learned otherwise. The value of an MBA with respect to education is really structuring that in a good way, top quality faculty, etc. right? That being said, even though the education is valuable, I feel it pales in comparison to the network that you build, which is your peers that you'll have in your classroom and the other contacts that you'll build as purely as a result of doing your MBA. And by the way, the network is something that you will realize only a few years down the line. It may not be apparent when you are in a classroom or getting drunk with your batchmates that these are the guys who are going to help me build my career. But when one of those turns around and says, hey, you know digital very well, so would you like to pitch? Or hey, I am starting up a company and I know that you do this, so would you like to help out, etc. So that network can become extremely valuable for you later. It may not be apparent as you're getting drunk with those guys in your second year, but it will become apparent down the line because everyone who's doing an MBA is going to go on to do fairly senior roles, right? And the third thing is certification and branding. I hate to say this because it might seem like it might seem like a bit of a evil thing to say, but the fact of the matter is this: in this day and age, branding does matter. Where you do your MBA from, where you do your education from, really matters. Actually, I would say where you do your MBA from matters more. Your engineering, not so much. Because let's face it, the top B schools are looked at differently in India or around the world. Again, this is something that my personal hero, Professor Scott Galloway, also says, right? It's the branding from the top. From where you study really matters. Helps you stand out in the industry. It helps you get a shoe in, etc. After that, you still need to prove yourself. Even if you get your MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, it sure will open a lot of doors. But then once you pass that door, you really need to prove yourself. Otherwise, you'll just be another faffpot who's cracked cat, but is not really good in the real world. So it opens a lot of doors. I'm not saying it's impossible for somebody from a lower rung B school to succeed. Is just a lot more difficult, and in this day and age I think that's going to become even more difficult. For me, I did my MBA from a school called Mica, and I was very keen to get into that particular place because I wanted to get into the advertising world. And I can and people have called Mica the IIM of the advertising industry, and I know that has helped me because I've seen that reaction from clients, or people pay attention when you are from this particular place, etc. And the other thing is, when you go to a top B school, all the other two things that I said, right, the education and the network, they just get amplified like crazy, right? Your batchmates will be of a higher level, and of course the quality of education will be manifold. So I would say don't do an MBA for the sake of it. Unless of course it's just a certification that you need to get ahead in your particular company itself. In that case, I guess you can look at it tactically, but I would say don't look at an MBA just for the sake of doing it. Definitely have a bit of experience before going into MBA, because I think that amplifies the value of what you get. And yeah, I think that's really about it. That being said, it's still possible to succeed in a career without an MBA, and those careers tend to be spaces that you don't typically need an MBA for, right? It's interesting because I was about to say the creative field, which is what your second question really was. But yeah, there's no getting around it. I think an MBA really does add value to a particular kind of career, and if moving up the corporate ladder is something that you want to do, which again many people might not want to do, I completely get that. An MBA helps. Not saying that it's impossible, but it definitely helps move up. But again, an MBA is not a silver bullet. It's not going to solve all problems. It's going to open doors, but then you really need to show your original thinking, your point of view, your executional capabilities, etc. Otherwise, you're just going to be another guy who went to an MBA and now tries to PPT his way out of everything. So don't fall into that trap. So I hope that helps with question number one. Question number two is a slightly tougher question to answer because it's a broad question, which is how can someone build a career in the creative industry? And I say that's a tough question to answer because the creative industry by itself is extremely vast, right? You're talking about everything from script writing all the way to working, say, in an ad agency to maybe working in an influencer management company to working for, say, website design and graphic design and stuff like that. So it's fairly broad when you say creative industry. I guess that's a good thing because there's so many more opportunities right now. Not to mention content creation by itself. That's also technically part of the creative space right now. And that's something that's growing like crazy with the creative economy. That being said, I think there are some things that are common to all these creative spaces. There are some formal ways of getting into the creative industry, which is through certain schools. Like I went to Mica, and at an undergraduate level, there are several places as well. But I would say the best approach is just to get out there and do it, right? Which is apply on your own to agencies, or even better, just freelance for a while. That will give you a good that's a good way to dip your toes into what the creative industry really entails, and will help you build your niche, etc., etc. And you can always jump into the whole fold full time later if you like. Trust me, creative people are in extremely high demand right now, as long as you can show quality, as long as you can be reliable, and as long as you can sort of like build a niche for yourself. Figure out what you're good at. So whether you get into a job formally or whether you're freelancing, figure out what you're good at and what you like. I think this is very important. To sort of like underline what I'm saying, try to work towards something that you can pitch yourself as, right? Don't try to be a jack of all trades when it comes to creative work. Have a sort of niche, have a sort of, a clientele, if you will. Who are your ideal set of clients, right? For the skills and the interests that you have, I think that will really help. Have your own theories and skills, build a niche, build a portfolio for yourself, and importantly, constantly learn by examples is basically how I like to approach, say, marketing and the spaces that I work in, and try to be unique and not replaceable. I think the creative space is still one industry where people matter more than the process. So try to do that. Try to build a niche for yourself. Try to be memorable in some way, and that will help. I know it's helped me, even though I didn't really plan it out that way. But it helped me get work when I decided to jump from full-time employment to freelancing, for instance. So those are a few broad things around how someone can build a career in the creative field. In short, there's no best practice or anything like that, or there are no specifics really. It's just a matter of getting in there, getting your hands dirty, and building your own theories and stuff along the way. All the best. I think the creative field is something that's expanding like crazy right now, and there's so many opportunities for everyone. And we've had a conversation before, I know, and I know where you want to end up. And I think anything that you do will help. Any sort of work that you do will help you get towards what your eventual goal is. Thanks for the question, Shehzad, and thanks for the kind words that you had given me on mail as well. All right, let's move to the next question.
Hey Deepak, a long-time listener and a huge fan of all your yarn about freelancing. Something that I wanted to ask you about is how you view growth, especially as a freelancer, and just the notion of mandatory growth being something that we strive for as freelancers. I wanted to find out how you approach growth, scale, bringing in more money with the loss in freedom, independence, and time that often accompanies this growth. And I wanted to find out if you had any frameworks in mind or considerations for making a decision like this. What do you think about before taking a call on growing your freelance gig?
Hey Akshay, that was a very thoughtful question, and I need to think about that for a bit. So I got into freelance honestly to get out of the this mad race of needing to grow every time. I'm very conscious about that. I think it's important for anyone who's getting into freelance to have an idea of why they're getting into it. Is it for the money? Is it for the freedom? Is it for creatively expanding what they can do? For me, while all these factors did play a role, for me the most important thing was freedom, right? And that's what I try to optimize for. And what do I mean by freedom? It is the ability to do projects of my choosing, and to be very honest, just to work fewer hours, because I've been working for about a decade in the advertising industry and events after that, both extremely sapping industries in terms of time. So I just wanted to reach a stage where I could stop work by 5 or 6, and I'm trying to constantly optimize that. My ultimate goal, I think, at least in the medium term, is to be able to work for about 5 hours a day, and then use the remaining time for personal projects and things that might help me later in the future, like write more or create more content, etc. Right? And now, when I look at it from that point of view, that actually ends up answering a lot of the questions that you did, like how do I view growth, right? For example, if I need to make the same amount of money that I am right now, plus, of course, a little more, maybe say 5 or 10% more, to account for increased savings and inflation, etc., then a simple calculation will tell me how much I need to earn more per hour, right? Now, what do I need to do in order to get there? Ironically, some of the content creation and stuff that I do in the time I save is going to help me do that, because it'll act as a signal, or it'll act as, what marketers might call brand building, right? So that's something I know I do need to do. So I don't know if this answers your question, but I do look at growth as something that is important, not for the sake of it, but so that I can achieve the goals that I had when I started off freelancing, right? I would love to reach a stage where I'm working for half the day, making the same amount of money as I was a while earlier, and using the remaining time either to make my life easier in the long run or just to relax. Really, there are some people who might want to use that extra time to make even more money, and I don't begrudge them that, right? Everyone is more driven by different sort of goals. If somebody wants to make a lot of money before the age of 40 and then retire early, well, power to them, I say. I think it's important to have a sense of where you stand in this scale, have a sense of what your overall goals, etc., are, and constantly work towards them. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck in the same rut again and again. And in order to make more money, what you end up doing is you just end up working more hours, which is just going to lead to a lot of frustration. Also, keep in mind that as you freelance more and more, you will gain more confidence, you will gain more expertise, and then you can end up charging more for clients. So your growth automatically comes that way, even if you don't reduce the amount of time that you're working. For example, when I started off freelancing, if I were just to sum up everything that I did at that point of time in terms of amount of money that I made, I guess you could say it was something like, say, 1,000 to 2,000 rupees per hour, right? And I know that could be considered low, but I did that purely because I knew that's a cost I could justify with the experience and the skills I had. As I started doing more and more projects, I felt more confident of increasing that rate, and hopefully shown value to clients as well. So you can end up charging more amount of money, or you can feel confident asking for more money as you gain more and more experience. So that's how I view growth. To me, growth is not something that should happen because of sake of it. And again, being an individual freelancer with no organization, shareholders, or even employees to be responsible to is really, really liberating. This answer would have been very different if I was actually running an agency or something like that. Nothing like that is on the horizon as of now. So yeah, that's how I look at growth. I think the last 2.5 years have been very good for me from mental peace point of view, creating other kinds of content, expanding the types of content that I consume in my leisure time, and just having leisure time at all. And I think if all that were to be told to me as a frustrated advertising person in 2016, 2017, I would have considered that growth. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. I know it's a bit of a cop-out, but that's how I look at growth. Thanks so much for the question, Akshay. And that is it for this episode of Ask Meta. If you have a question like this that you'd like me to give you my perspective on, please write in. I am at Chuck of All Trades on Instagram, Chuck_Gopal on Twitter, and my email ID is in the show notes as well. Please send them in. No question will go unanswered, that I promise you. I have enough questions for one more episode, so that's definitely going to happen. But hey, if you have a question, then please do write in so I can have another episode out as well. As always, thank you for listening to Ask Meta or Getting Meta, and I will be back in your ears next week. See you, folks.
Hello, everybody. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcasting Network. On Cyrus Says, Cyrus is joined by the actress Neena Gupta, who talks about her distinguished career and her new book, Sach Kahun To, an autobiography. On the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast, Varun, DJ and Ashwin discuss the last week of the IPL 2021 and Dhoni finishing it off in style as CSK enters the finals. On Simplified, the gang debate the Great Resignation, a global phenomena causing a major spike in employees quitting en masse. On Paisa Vaisa, Anupam talks to Rohan Paranjpe, head of alternative investments at Waterfield Advisors. They discuss investing and the outlook on startup culture in India. And on The Habit Coach, Ashton explains how we should slow down and smell the roses with the help of the Goan concept of Sousegard. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you enjoyed this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. We appreciate the word of mouth. And finally, we'd like to thank the sponsors on our network this week: Cred, Bank of Baroda Quarter, CoinSwitch Kuber, Slay Coffee, Intel, and Kotak Mahindra Bank. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Namaste, this is Cyrus Brocha. I am part of the government cancel culture program to remove rubbish off all the different streams available. So what we have is all the collected rubbish we put together on our show. It's called Cyrus Says. It's on IVM Podcast. You have to watch it and listen to it. It's on our app. It's on our website. It's on the YouTube channel. It's on Facebook. There are many different ways. Don't bother me and ask me how. You have to find out. We talk to different personalities. Many of them are known. Some are just people we meet downstairs and invite them up for chai. But the point is, it's fun and it's very therapeutic. So please join in and listen to Cyrus Says.